It's me, Duty Boy! Welcome back to my Minecraft Ocean tutorial series. We've covered tridents, ocean monuments, guardian farms, and squid farms. Today we're going to examine the current state of kelp farms and build the craziest, fastest kelp farm possible. Kelp is a plant that grows naturally in most ocean biomes, and it can sometimes also be purchased from wandering traders. Kelp can be harvested by striking it, and it's easy to plant and grow. Kelp can be manually raised in downward flowing water to create water source blocks and make items float upwards in the water column. Kelp can also be smelted into dried kelp, which is a food that can be eaten very quickly and restores 1 drumstick in the health bar. Dried kelp can also be crafted into dried kelp blocks, which are decorative but also a fuel source. A renewable, growable fuel source. Dried kelp blocks burn 2.5 times longer than coal or charcoal, which are not renewable energy sources. A dried kelp block smelts 20 items, whereas a piece of coal smelts 8. Dried kelp and dried kelp blocks are also fairly valuable in composting and raising composting level, so they can be used in bone meal farms. Since 1.16, 1 piece of bone meal can be used to grow kelp by 1 block, even if the kelp stock is at full age. I have a mob farm in my world and double chests full of bones, so I want to exploit this to create a kind of fast-growing kelp threshing machine that gives me tons of kelp in a short amount of time. But first, let's examine the standard automatic kelp farm. The basic kelp farm without bone meal involves placing a piston and an observer behind a growing kelp stalk so that when the kelp grows up in front of the observer, the piston below automatically cuts the kelp just above the root. The kelp then floats upward through the water source blocks where it can be gathered. We can tile these until we have a row of 15 stations, since that's how far the redstone signal travels behind the observers. With this setup, when a single kelp stalk in the row grows 3 high, all 2 high kelp are cut and collected at the same time. Many years ago, Cubfan from Hermitcraft came up with a farm that combines 180 kelp stations in a farm that expands upwards, collects all the kelp at the top in water streams, and even auto-smelts them if preferred. That's the farm we are building here. Many people still build this farm. I'll include a link down in the description. Because we are building Cubfan's farm underwater, we need additional blocks to cover the redstone dust. Just run a line of blocks behind the pistons as usual. At this end, place another block. Now we need to create a little tube for the redstone to go in by placing 2 more rows of blocks behind the observers. At the other end, run a line of blocks out past the edge, place 2 blocks below like this, and extend the 2 rows out to the building edge. Place a door on this block and a trapdoor against this block and flip it down. Stand on this block, break only this block, then flip the trapdoor and crawl into the space. Break the blocks until you see the first observer, then 14 more blocks. Reaching the end, place redstone dust behind each observer as you crawl backward. Seal the tunnel, chop down the door and trapdoor, and remove the extra blocks. Now do this all the way up both sides of the kelp farm. Another extra step for this underwater build is to add a roof on top of the farm. Swim into each kelp chamber and cover the top with top half slabs 1 block down from the top. Fill the entire top with temporary dirt blocks covering both kelp chambers and the center. Then place a roof or lid on top of the dirt blocks. Make it as decorative as you like. Take out the dirt blocks at the top of the center aisle and then take out as many as you can reach to the left and right. To reach the blocks at the back, submerge in the water and double tap the forward control to enter sprint swim mode. Swim straight up and into the gap and you should be able to crawl in the 1 high space and dig out the remaining dirt. Then just use a couple of buckets to add water streams at the back of each side as normal. With the water streams in place, you can then take out the top half slabs. I've even managed to clear out the water here in the corridor in between the 2 parts of the kelp farm, And so now let's go AFK here at Cubfan's automatic kelp farm for 15 minutes and see how much kelp it collects up there in my temporary storage solution. All right, so we've been here for 15 minutes. Let's go see what's in the chest. All right, so that is 323 kelp in just 15 minutes. That is almost 1,300 kelp per hour. That is really pretty good. If we run that much kelp through smelters and craft them into blocks, that means we get about 144 dried kelp blocks per hour. The other potential application of this farm is that we could run the kelp through composters to create bone meal. So I'm going to run another 15-minute test with this setup and play with the dolphins. So I've just concluded another 15-minute test with a composter, and we generated 18 bone meal. That would be just 72 bone meal per hour, and that's a pretty paltry amount. So unfortunately, this farm is not going to be a significant source of bone meal. Obviously, there's better ways to get bone meal in Minecraft 1.17. This method of farming kelp may not be fast or highly efficient, but it is consistent and reliable. Now let's examine another type of kelp farm that uses bone meal. I have here all the materials needed to build a design by LogicalGeekBoy. I'll put a link to his tutorial down in the description. This is an excess amount of glass which I purchased from my librarians to use in my underwater city as well as this project. And here are 10 shulker boxes full of bones. I've been running my mob farm every time I play in this world since I built it in my survivor world in October of 2020, and this is it. This is every single bone it's produced in all that time. I'm going to convert all this to bone meal just so I can run this farm one time. Once and only once. Okay, here's LogicalGeekBoy's bone meal kelp farm for examination. First off, converting all of this bone meal, actually converting 10 shulker boxes full of bones into all of this bone meal was daunting, even when you do it in the hand. I mean, it was like a 30-minute operation to convert all these bones into bone meal and get them into these boxes. So that's one thing to note. All right, let's turn it on. Wow, look at all that slowly trickle up in there. That's really cool. This is a great kelp farm that directly converts one piece of bone meal into one piece of kelp. This means that the output of this farm is only limited by the amount of bone meal on hand. So these long columns of water allow the kelp to slowly gather to the top to be collected in the hoppers. That should reduce clogging on the hoppers, and that way we don't have kelp sitting there in the water waiting to be collected. However, we're about 10 minutes into the test and the kelp is starting to clog the outside hoppers. This is because water physics in Minecraft are weird, and the kelp are floating outward as they float upward. If these kelp aren't collected soon, they're going to despawn, which means that this farm is not great to run for long periods of time. So I'm going to turn this farm off now, and I'm going to make some modifications to it and show you a simple solution. I'm back now with the same farm with a few modifications. I added an extra space inside the water tank to each side of the dispenser row, and I raised kelp up this column to create water source blocks. Up here at the top, I added extra hoppers and chests to each end of the collection row. I don't have much bone meal left to test with, but I'm going to load up what I have here and try again. Okay, that's it. That is literally all of my bone meal that I've generated in this entire world, going into this system to test it out and see if it works better. All right, let's flip it on and give it another test. All right, so see, yes, now we've got kelp that is floating immediately to the outside And I think it's caused by the the pistons down here. Yeah, it's like they get knocked over to the side immediately by the pistons. So that must be why things are floating up and to the side. My God, those outside chests are taking on quite a bit of kelp, actually. But, you know, this one is not getting overloaded. We are about 3 or 4 minutes into the test. This one, too, taking on... So much of the kelp really does go to the outside. Okay, yes, here we are at 10 minutes into the testing cycle, and none of the hoppers are clogged. All right, yep, amazingly, my bone meal doesn't seem to be stopping, so I have to go down now and turn this off. How much bone meal was left? Okay. Yep, same deal there. Okay, yeah, like, we are at capacity on kelp here. All right, I'm going to start turning these into full chests so that I can count them. Okay, so after redistributing the items for better counting, I've got 15 double chests, and then this for a grand total of 54,426, which is irrelevant because that's exactly how much bone meal I used inside this system. And I'd estimate that between the two tests, I probably ran this thing for about 22 minutes. Just 22 minutes, ran through 54,426 bone meal in just 22 minutes. And now I have no bone meal left. So although I have a lot of kelp, for sure, I have no more bone meal, and I can't make any more kelp. However, if you do have a lot of bone meal, say you have like a skeleton spawner or something like that, this bone meal kelp farm by LogicalGeekBoy is sure to give you all the kelp you want. Since this kelp farm requires massive amounts of bone meal that are impossible to produce in survival, we're going to beef up Old Reliable here and decorate it to look like an underwater power plant. Here are the materials I used in this build. We're now going to add 3 more of Cubfan's farming units just like these, all facing outward in a plus shape. From the inside end of the one we built already, place 8 more dark prismarine blocks, then a sea lantern to mark the center. At each end, place 1 more block, then go out 4 blocks to each side, and then 18 blocks away from the center. Then fill in each of these pads. On top each of these, build another one of Cubfan's kelp farms. Again, you can find a link to his video tutorial in the description. Now that we've got the 3 farms built and roofed and the redstone working underwater, fill in the floor with dark prismarine and fill in these gaps between the kelp farms with walls. Then add a glass rooftop between all of the kelp farms. Drain out the water in the middle using gravel and sponges. Place the gravel 6 blocks apart, intersecting, creating 5x5 chambers. Okay guys, now that we got this central area all cleared out, we're going to create water chutes from each of these farms going directly into the center in order to carry all the kelp into a smelter. So now we have to set up those water chutes. We have one corridor that has already been drained of water, and it's actually the exception. I only did that because I wanted to do some testing. You probably would not normally do that. And then we've got 3 corridors that are still full of water, and that is where we are going to show you how to set up your water chutes. Alright, so if you've got one of your water-filled corridors in your kelp farm filled up with gravel like this, then all you need to do is take out a single block and water will begin to pour down from the top. The kelp is shooting out, as it were, and all you need to do is swim up the top of the water column here and into the chamber in between. So now we are going to start at the back here. We're collecting a lot of kelp already. I'm going to grab prismarine and put a single prismarine block here, a prismarine brick under it just to be decorative. You don't have to use the same blocks I do. And then coming one down, so here is the top of the water in between the 2 sides of the kelp farm. We're going to come down 1, 2 blocks and put a piece of glass there. We're going to come in 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to go down 1 block and place another piece of glass and come in 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we're going to place another one down and we're going to come in 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that was 5, 6, and 6. All right, so now we need to drain out the top portion of this, and we can quit this water flowing in there. And I'm going to use gravel, and I'm just going to go back down here and fill all this up with gravel. All right, so now I'm in this one space that I can't quite get out of. I'm going to dig out the gravel blocks this way, and then I'm going to put another piece of gravel there, and we should now have drained most of the gravel out of this top area, and we can just clean all this up. Alright, so now that we've got this little chute all drained out, I'm going to come back to the end here. I'm going to take out this piece of gravel. Oop, lost it, turned into a piece of flint. I'm going to place a prismarine brick right here, and then I'm going to place another piece of gravel on top of that just to act as a stopper. Then I'm going to go up to the far end here, and I'm going to place a single bucket of water right there at the end. And now you can see all of the kelp is now floating down. Well, that one's underneath the glass, but the rest of the kelp floated down here, and it is waiting until we take this stopper out in order to flow into the center of the chamber here. Now we're going to fly down to the bottom, and we're going to take out a little bit more of this gravel. All right, and once we have a little water column that we can swim back up again, we're going to go back inside the bottom portion of this, and we're going to fill up this entire area from front to back with gravel. Okay, and now I'm going to fill it up with gravel below me. I'm going to be in another little pocket where I've got a couple of water blocks here that I'm standing in, but all you need to do again is just sort of dig out this way and then fill this up with gravel, and then guess what? All the water is now drained out, And you can just dig this gravel out of the area and you should have a clear hallway. All right, once we have the corridor drained of water, we're going to want to pillar up there or use scaffolding to get back up to the top where we created the water chute and put the little stopper there. All right, now following me very carefully, we're going to want to put a couple of blocks down below here. So I'm going to put a prismarine block and then a brick block below that. Block here, block here, block here, and then 2 blocks here just like that. And this is how we will create a little water chute that goes all the way in the center. Now this block down here, you want to create a little path that is 8 blocks long starting right there. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whoops. Probably better if you just hop onto it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's as long as you want it to be. And then you just want to bring these 2 lines down into the center to match it. So now we'll bring this side down the same. And that's it. That's what you're going to do for now. And we're going to do the same on all 3 sides. Below this center hole, place 2 blocks down from the north side of the hole, then a temporary block and a hopper. Then build the smelter Cubfan shows you how to build at the end of his video. Instead of furnaces, I use 13 smokers, which smelt the kelp so fast that you won't notice the difference. I built my smelter facing south, so I had to flip the detector rail that switches the rails ahead to the left side of the smelter track. And if your smelter faces the same direction, you'll have to do the same. I ran the hoppers under the smokers from the middle out to each side and then down to 6 high bulk storage units, 7 double chest columns apiece in all 4 corners of the room. Then just cover up all the hoppers and add a prismarine floor on the 8th block up. For the outside, I just extend all these prismarine bricks to the ends, then continue them across to the center. This gives the build a kind of scaly, futuristic look. Guys, look at this farm. I am so excited to start it up and test it. Look at how epic this is underwater, and it's right near my Guardian farm. This is turning out to be an exceptionally epic underwater build. Sorry, I got my shield caught in the way. So what do you say? Let's fire it up, let's test it, and let's see how it works. So I created it so that there's these 2 spaces that are missing down at the bottom, so the water flows down into it, and we get this nice little transition. We can just swim right out of here, and there is the kelp gathering up above. And I also put a block up there with a source block behind it, and now this is, and there's a stair, waterlogged stair down here that the water flows into, so we have another water column here. And it acts as a kind of elevator to the upper level. So you just have to swim up to here, and then you can double tap forward, and then you're up into the smelting chamber. And I needed to light these 2 corners, and so I just sort of came up with the idea that there might be these big, like, I don't know, power transistors or whatever you want to think of these as. So I just put these in the corner of the room here. We've got the smelters all ready to go. Over here in the corner, I have this slab here. There's a rail on top of that slab. It needs to be there. And you can still see into the minecart with chest. It is full of fuel, all of the dry kelp that we made using LogicalGeekBoy's farm. Extra down here. And I'm going to flip this on and start fueling up this whole smelter and get it ready to go. Okay, and now in order to start this, we're going to need to remove the stoppers that we put in a little while ago. So I'm just going to raise a scaffold up to one of these, and we can go around and remove the stoppers. All right, so there's probably quite a bit of kelp behind here, Yes, there is. So in order to do a fair test, I'm going to take that kelp out of there and store it in this shulker box. And then we will go around and unstopper all of these. I'm trying to be fast and pick up as much of the excess kelp as possible. And once I get it all in hand here, I think we're going to go ahead and start unstoppering these and get that all flowing into the center there. We do have to get this dirt back, so I think one went in there. I may have to go and get that. There we go. Have to get that dirt back. So once we unstopper these, they should all be flowing directly to the center. They are, and they stop right there, and all the kelp gets dumped into the hopper below. All right, so I'm about 4 minutes and 30 seconds into this recording, and I'm going to go ahead and I think, yep, it's fueling up. So let's go down and check and see how the smelter does. All right, yeah, so this cart is going to need to fill up completely with kelp before it gets going. So it'll be a while before we start getting our first payload. Everything is it's getting filled up with fuel. So we got 64 in each of these smokers. It's all ready to go. All right, we've got 4 stacks in there. This is filling up quite fast, and it looks like it's only been about 3 minutes. So that is quite a bit faster than if we were just operating off of one single kelp farm. And there it is. All right, it works. All right, so let's go downstairs and check to see if the items are flowing into the storage chest below. So, yeah, this is what I did with my central storage area. I used stairs, dark prismarine stairs, to create these little water channels, and now it looks like there's like water power going to all these places and into the center, which kind of looks like a sort of big power nodule. And there are craft tables near each one of these chest sections. And then overhead, I created a very kind of power plant looking sort of chandelier up in the center, very sort of futuristic sci-fi. And based on the way that the kelp comes in, I think this chest here should be filling up. Look at that. I mean, it has seriously only been about 7 minutes, and we've got a couple stacks of dried kelp in each of the chests. That is great. Man, this is amazing. All right, we're going to keep letting it run, and we'll be back when the 15 minutes are up. All right, so it's been running about 15 minutes now. Looks like there's a couple more pieces of kelp in each smoker. So we're going to head back downstairs, and we're going to see how much we have. Oh my goodness. All right, it's still trickling in a little bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to try to throw some of it into a chest here. All right, so the results are that in 15 minutes we got 1,280 dried kelp in this farm, which means that in 1 hour we would get a grand total of 5,120 kelp. Totally worth it. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial. Please click the like button if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon.